Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're just going to be looking at this continued move sideways, right? So Bitcoin's mainly moving sideways. We've said before many times that sideways movements in bull markets are going to be par for the course, so we're just going to go over that again. If you guys do like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Please give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. So let's go ahead and jump in. So if you guys remember, if we look back, right, well, first we can see that, what's happened in recent days, recent weeks, right, is, we were in this reaccumulation zone over here from late April until late July, right? So approximately 3 months in this accumulation zone. And this accumulation zone spanned approximately, 16%, right, from the bottom of it to the top. Obviously, it depends on exactly where you draw the bottom. If you want to take the bottom of that candle and maybe the top of this candle, we're talking about 13%. But somewhere, 15% plus or minus a couple percent, right? What's a couple percent among friends? So this was our general reaccumulation range. And when we were in this range, we said that as long as we continue to move sideways, we're more and more likely to break upwards, right? The general thinking is, we need to slowly move back to 20K over the next, say, 16 months or so, right? So that we get to our prior all-time high, and then we can go parabolic from there. This, of course, is just in line with the trends of Bitcoin we've seen historically speaking, right? I mean, there's nothing, it's fairly straightforward. You can see each of these cycles are getting longer, right? Lengthening cycles. By the way, a lot of you have told me that, some other people have used my charts, and it's fine, right? It's fine. And I did say, right, I mean, I told you guys back in 2019 that once we get into 2020 and 2021, a lot of people, right, they're going to shift their narrative. And back in 2019, I didn't know what the quote unquote reason was going to be for why people would say, oh, this is the reason why Bitcoin won't peak in 2021. Of course, there's a lot of course, given that, the climate, the economic climate of the world today, there's obviously a lot of reasons that you can point to why it won't happen. But I'm here to bring the story, or at least to push the narrative that I've been pushing for years now, is that it was never going to peak in 2021. And then nothing about the data ever suggested that. And as we continue to march through the cycle, look for more and more people, right? More and more YouTube channels, people on Twitter, to start saying, oh, well, what if it's not, a peak in 2021? What if this is some fabrication that we were fed as a big marketing tactic, right? But in fact, the data never suggested we were gonna peak in 2021. And so I'm just here to say, right, and the reason why this is important is because, to have a 4-year cycle, right, as we've said, one of the most common questions I get, right, is, well, what would cause you to change your mind, right? What would cause you, Ben, to think that the 4-year cycle theory could be true? And the main thing that I've always said, right, is, well, we need to get to a sustainable 20K by the beginning of 2021, right? We need to get to a sustainable 20K by then. Obviously, a year ago when I was saying that, there was more uncertainty, right, because we were still pretty far out. It's almost October, right? I mean, we're about to start the 4th quarter of the year, and so this is the last quarter before the quarter that we would need to be at a sustainable 20K, in my opinion, right? So, and we know by looking at historical trends that it's not a parabolic move to 20K or the prior all-time high, right? It's a slower move, and then it goes parabolic once we get to the prior all-time high, right? Slower move up, then parabolic. Slower move up, then parabolic. Slower move up, then parabolic. And again, the cycles lengthen each time. Just for completeness, I know a lot of you guys have already seen it before, but for completeness, whether you measure, say, bottom to bottom, when you're measuring out how the market cycles compare, we see it increasing, right? 462, 1148, 1435. Therefore, we would expect the next one to go from bottom to bottom. It would be longer than 1435 days. If it were 1435 days, which is identically what it was last cycle, then it would put us in October of 2022. But this is not what the trend suggests, right? It does not suggest that that's the case. And so what we might expect is, somewhere closer to 2,000 days or so before the next bottom local bottom, which I actually think will probably, the next bottom after the next market peak will probably be around $40,000 to $50,000. The reason for this is because the price of Bitcoin at the halving has always been equivalent to within 1 to 2 percentage points of the quote-unquote fair value that's this logarithmic regression fit. And we made this fit a long time ago, and then at the halving, right, in early May, if we zoom in, you guys remember in the second week of May when we had the halving, so right around here, this is, we were fairly close to the fair value of what Bitcoin was, right? So we were fairly close. You can see right in this region, we were only a couple, like 1 to 2 percentage points away from that. That's why I think that the next bottom, after the next blow off top around 6 figures, I think the next bottom will be closer to 40 to 50K. So I'm not here to bring you a message. I don't think it's true to pump the channel, right? I'm here to tell you what's realistic. And it's realistic to think that Bitcoin will not peak in 2021. So, and again, if you measure it from from bottom to top, which some people like to do, right? The first one's 287, the second one's 749, the third one is 1064, and therefore we would expect the next one to be longer. If it were exactly the last cycle, 1064, it would in fact put us at the end of 2021. But there's no reason to think that that would be the case, right? I mean, I know some people like to cherry pick and combine this cycle with this one. There's really no reason to do that. I think it's, if you're gonna ignore one 85% drop, then you're essentially cherry picking which 85% drops you're going to include. So again, in the same manner, we speculate out and say, well, it's probably going to be later on, and this is why I say sometime. I think most likely time frame would be sometime in the summer of 2023. Of course, I don't know, right? I would say plus 6 or 8 months or so, but somewhere in the summer of 2023, I think is probably the highest likelihood, right? A lot of people think, well, it peaked in 2017 in December, and then it peaked in 2013 in December, therefore it has to peak in December. Well, it peaked in 2011 in the summer. So again, it's just cherry picking, 2 data points, and not looking at the other one that peaked at a completely different time of the year. So then finally, if you measure from top to top, right, which is another thing some people like to do, it was 917 followed by 1449. If it were exactly 1449 days, then we're talking about end of 2021. But again, there's no reason to think that it would be exactly the same as the last cycle when we can see the one before that was shorter. So I think it's just I think it's more people are biased, right? Recency bias. You're more biased to what's actually happened recently, and since a lot of people experienced the last bull market, or they looked on a chart to see what happened, they say, oh, it was 4 years, therefore the next one has to be. But if we actually look at the data, right, it suggests that it's taking longer, and therefore we're probably going to be out somewhere in 2023 or so. So again, when you look at these sideways movements, to wrap it up, right, or at least to put a bow on that discussion. When we look at these sideways movements, some people, it's easy to get discouraged, right, when you see it moving sideways for months at a time, right? And if you consider this just a sideways movement, right, going between 10 and 12K, we're already looking at approximately 63 days in this regime, right? Approximately 63 days in this regime. But again, if you go back to the last cycle, this was pretty standard, right? I mean, it was really standard to see this type of stuff. You can see that when we first got above the 20-week moving average here, we came back down to it. Again, it was a 20% drop just like we had this time. And then we mostly moved sideways for the next 126 days or so. And while it looks like we were hugging the 20-week moving average the whole time, when you zoom in, again, you can see that in fact, there were price movements in here, right? The drop to the 20-week was a 20% drop. We then went back up, 20-something%, then back down to the 20-week. So when you zoom out, of course, it just looks like a continued test of the 20-week, which I think it was. But if you were to project that to today and say, well, what if we do just test the 20-week for for months and months and months? It doesn't mean it can't go to 12K in the short term, right? I mean, if it does do something similar to last cycle, as we've said, it could still come back up here and then maybe come back down to the 20-week. We know the 20-week will keep increasing and then bounce off of it, right? But then when you zoom out later, in hindsight, you say, oh yeah, this was just a test of the 20-week moving average. So it's been 5 weeks. We're in the 5th week of testing the 20-week moving average. Obviously, this is much better than before. You can see the last time we tested the 20-week moving average, we instantly fell through it. The time before that, the first time we actually hit the 20-week was this candle here. And and we instantly fell below it, right? So this one came to the 100-week moving average. This one came to the 200-week with a wick to the 300-week. So at least for the time being, things are looking better for Bitcoin. My contention before, right, a few months ago, was that we're either going to hold it this time, we're either going to hold the 20-week moving average on this test, or it'll be the next one, right? So over here, I was saying, we're probably, there's a good chance we just kick the can down the road. Here, maybe we kick the can down the road. Here, it's not so clear, right? There's a decent chance we don't kick the can down the road, right? There's a decent chance we hold this in lieu of the idea that we need to get to a sustainable 20K within 16 months. And again, it doesn't mean we can't have a short-term bubble to 16K. I mean, we had a bubble up to 14K in 2019, right? So, it's of course possible that we come up to that trend line and then get rejected by it, or at least come close to it, right? I mean, if you zoom in to the last cycle, we actually had a test of it right here, right? We came back up to the prior all-time high. It was a terribly drawn circle. We came back up here, and then we came back down, and then we came back up, right? And then we broke through it, back down to test it again, and then we were off to the races. But again, this did not happen until we were in the regression band. For Bitcoin to go to 20K right now, let's say it were to go to 20K by early 2021, which I really don't think would happen. We're talking approximately 70% above where the fair value is. And so this is why I'm saying, right, I think it makes more sense for us to give it another 16 months or so before we even have a realistic chance of holding 20K as support. So if we imagine a scenario, right, we live in the cryptoverse, but in the multiverse, right, there's many cryptoverses in the multiverse. If the one we end up experiencing holds us above the 20-week, right, and the 20-week kind of trends like this, and it does something like this, and eventually it slowly moves up, right, and then we finally get there, and in the meantime the price is going up, it's coming back down, it's doing something like this, or maybe it's just hugging it for a while. This is obviously one potential scenario that could play out, and we would still be right on target, right, because it would get us to a potential sustainable 20K by early 2022. But yet we would still have a ways to go to get to our next, paradigm shift, right, in the price of Bitcoin at the upper regression, up the upper regression band, and then from there to see a pullback back into the lower regression band, right, which at the time, as I said, I mean, I'm not really drawing it that well, but I think at the time it'll probably be close to around $40,000 to $50,000. Somewhere in that ballpark is where I kind of see the next low after our next blow off top. So, and again, when I talk about late 2021, early 2022 for a sustainable 20K, right? I mean, there's always uncertainty there too. I think the uncertainty would most likely be on the later end, right? I don't think that we're going to get to a sustainable 20K any earlier than late 2021. I tend to think early 2022 is the most likely time frame. But it could happen in the second quarter of 2022. But again, the main thing to take away from it, right, is that things will take longer. And in addition to things taking longer, the expected return, right, will be lower. And so this is just something you need to consider before you drink the Kool-Aid of whatever person you follow on Twitter is serving up, telling you that you're going to make a lot of money in 2021 because Bitcoin's going to 100K, when essentially all the evidence supports the idea that it's not going to do that in 2021. But in fact, as we've mentioned before, we are, we're still just in our accumulation zone, right? We've had several of these accumulation zones before. This is the range that we're in right now, and we need to respect the phase of the market cycle we're in. I guarantee you, if one day Bitcoin is at 40 to 50K, let's say in 2 or 3 years, let's say 2.5 years, Bitcoin's at 50K or something, I guarantee you people are going to look back at this time and wish that they had bought more, right? Wish that they could have seen the writing on the wall. But they're not going to be able to, right? You're going to look at these times and say, well, the data was there. It suggested that 2019, 2020, and a part of 2020, 21 at the very least were the accumulation years for Bitcoin, and it's just what it is, right? And 2021 was never meant to be the next blow off top. So again, as I said, watch for other channels, watch for people who are proponents of other shorter theories, right? There's a lot of people that talk about the 4-year cycle. Watch for these people to slowly shift their narrative and to find a reason to, right? And obviously the reason will be well, there's lengthening cycles, there's a a global pandemic, whatever it wants to be, right? In 2019, we said there's going to be a reason that they're going to pivot to for why it's not the case, and of course, at the time it'll appeal to the audience because they're going to want to be told that the party's not over, and so it'll continue to get the upvotes. So I know I've gone off on a bit of a ramble in this video, but I just want to to see people look at the data for what it is. And I think part of the ramble is fueled by seeing other people copy a lot of my charts and never generally they don't give credit for this kind of stuff. In my world, right? I mean, I understand in crypto YouTube world, people are maybe held to different standards, but I mean, I did my PhD in engineering, and if you use someone's work without citing them, it's really bad. So these people that use other people's stuff without citing them, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect me, but just know that's going to happen, and know that as we continue on through the market cycle, people are gonna shift away from Fourier cycle theory more and more and more, and that's just it's just the nature of the game. So looking forward, what we're looking for again is for Bitcoin to stay above the 20-week moving average, right? This is our main short-term test. This is when it still makes somewhat sense to hold altcoins, right? A lot of altcoins, when Bitcoin's above the 20-week, if it's below the 20-week, the case for a lot of altcoins just kind of like goes out the window, right? You don't even want to think about it for the most part, because most of them are not going to perform well against Bitcoin. Not all of them, right? But most of them won't perform well against Bitcoin during that time period. So what I'm watching again is, can Bitcoin continue to stay above the 20-week moving average, on the weekly time frame? Like if we have a wick below, it's fine. You can see this wick was identically at the 20-week, this one identically at the 20-week. This one came below it a couple percent or so, but again, these are just wicks. As long as these candles are above the 20-week moving average, I think that Bitcoin is still in business, and that things are still bullish, right? I think that things can obviously turn around really quickly anytime that Bitcoin is above its 20-week moving average. So in the same manner that it took long periods of time in the last bull market, right? When we look back at it, in the same manner that we were in these long reaccumulation modes for months upon months, right? 6 months sometimes. We expect the same thing in this cycle. We will expect time periods where it's just going to move sideways for a while. And while you look back at the last cycle and you see, oh wow, this is great, like it just goes up, when you zoom in, you can see there's periods of time where it's just moving sideways for 5-6 months or so. So again, it's all about your perspective. If it does generally trend up over the next few years and does something like this, people are going to say, oh wow, it's a nice trend, but we're going to know that maybe the price went up, but then it went sideways for a while, and it got pretty boring. But at the end of the day, these sideways movements give you a great opportunity, right, to continue to move into the market if you're willing to take the risk on. So let me know what you guys think about the content. I know it was a little bit of a tangent today in talking and kind of just going over some of my thoughts with what people have been covering on other places. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you guys like the content. Please give the video a thumbs up. We do, of course, have the premium list. You can find that at intothecryptoverse.com. And then also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. That'll wrap it up for the video. Let me know what you guys think about the video in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.